case, without having, you know, I used to call it a reclassification tool, or a, you know, kind of developed into the Z factor because I wanted to identify what my zero sales were in any line. Epicor actually came up with a study a few years ago that said that basically 30% of every jobber store is basically either overstocked or zero sales items that are totally unprofitable. As a result of that, I started looking at this in every one of my product lines to see what my zero sales percentage was. So when you look at the value of a particular product line, if I have, you know, $10,000 in the line, you know, and 30% of it is unusable, that's $3,000 in just one line. My job is to basically turn that stuff into saleable items. So what the Z factor is basically, it's just a math program there. It's basically the value of your inventory versus your zero sales. So you're going to divide them and get a percentage and basically identify which lines are a problem. Very, very easy to do, okay? I'm going to just pick one product line here. The first thing that I want to be able to do is I'm going to go into my bestseller report. And when I go into my bestseller report, 1111, I'm going to pick a product line here. All right, I'm just picking Wix here. Everyone seems to be, that's their favorite line. And I'm not going to use any report codes, and I'm not going to even change these rank percentages. And I want to kind of explain what this is, because ranking your inventory is another important factor of this. The way these percentages work, you'll notice that the total must reach 100%. The way this is set right now, if I had 100 part numbers in my Wix line, I want my top 23 numbers, the 23 fastest movers would be assigned an A. The next 22% would be a B. The next 20% would be a C, the next 20% a D, and the last 15% of my inventory would be a W. I don't actually agree with these percentages. Usually what I do is and this isn't necessary. You can still identify your zero sales and what we're going to do without doing this at first, but ranking your inventory, I think, is an important thing. So basically what I did, just to make it real simple for yourself, you could do a 25, a 25, a 25, and a 25. And if anything doesn't sell, I want to rank that as something that my warehouse should stock or my vendor should stock. I don't want to stock I don't want to keep non-stocking items in my shelf. Okay, so if I just hit F7 here, okay, and this pops up, it says output to the screen. If I hit a return, you'll see at the bottom of the screen it says, if I put an N, it'll show any new numbers that you put in. An S will just be a summary. A Z will identify your zero sales. Now you can identify zero sales through the stock status report, but this will also rank your inventory and do a few other things with it. So when I put a Z in here and hit a return, it very, very quickly will start displaying all my zero sales, okay? And as I scroll down to the bottom of the screen, or in an Autologue, when you print anything to the screen, if I hit an escape and then the letter E, it should take me to the bottom of the screen, okay? And it'll tell me that this particular line has $6,680 worth of zero sales, which is significant, okay? Let me go back up to the top of the screen real quick here. And what it did is it basically, items that were formerly an A, okay, that's where this ranking is. This is the previous rank, and this is your recommended rank. It's saying we should change all these items that don't sell to a pop code R. And once we do that, then we could do some other stuff with it very, very quickly. Once I see this, basically the next thing I'm going to hit is an F11, and then I'm going to hit an F10. And what the F10 is going to allow me to do is it's going to ask me, do you want to print this report? I really don't want to print it. Okay. What do I want to do with all these zero sales items? Okay. I want to actually set the pop code on those items to a pop code R. That was our little code for they should be returned. Right from here, you can create a return PO for the R items. The reason I never do from here is that it puts it in in pop code order instead of in numerical order, and it's too difficult to pull it. So there's another way that I'll get them into a PO that I'll show you at a later time. But you can create the PO right from here if you want. It's just pulling them off the shelf. They're not in numerical order, and I think that makes it a little difficult. Okay? So basically I say set the pop code to R. I hit the return or down arrow. I create a PO. Do I want to create a PO? I say no. And it asks me if I'm sure or not. If you notice at the bottom of the screen here, there's a space bar. It says space to toggle. So when I want to change that from a no to a yes, I hit my space bar and hit enter. Okay? So now all those items that are 0 sales now have a pop code of R instead of what they were before. So all I did there was identify my 0 sales, and I coded them with a pop code R so that I can manage them very, very easily. Okay? There's a couple things I could do. And I don't want to get off subject, but I want to get back to this with ranking your inventory, because there's other things you could do with this that's very, very important. Okay. Once I've done this, and I'll go in and I'll go to the 1410 inventory duplicate or duplicate inventory fields, and this is one time that you can lie to the system. Okay, so beginning that product line 163, okay, to 163, stocked parts only. I'm going to say yes to this. Okay, and I say all part numbers in this product line, yes. All pop codes, I say no. Now it's going to ask me, what pop codes do you want? I don't want my A's or my B's or my C's or my D's or my W's. My R's, yes. Okay. If my S's are no, if you have any obsoletes in there that you know you have, I'll actually set that to a yes as well. Okay. And at that point, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to zero out all my order point fields. Okay. And once I go through this now, every one of those numbers is going to be an overstock. Okay. This is a live system, so I don't want to change his order points at this point, but I'm sure he's got some overstock in there, and I'm going to show you how we create a vendor return very, very quickly. Okay. So once you go through this drill and you go all the way down and it says, are you sure? Yes. Now we've taken out all the order points. And what happens with a lot of parts, and this happens in almost every store, they'll have something that's sat on their shelf for a long time. And then maybe they'll sell one, and then all of a sudden it gets reordered and it's going to sit there for another 2 or 3 years before they sell it. So I recommend that you do this at least on a quarterly basis, so that when you do sell something, if nothing else, if you can't create a vendor return, or if your vendor won't take this stuff back, you're at least getting out these order points so that you're not reordering dead merchandise that's going to sit there for a long time again. Okay. Now we have a function on the system, and we talked about this in some of the other things, where basically we can create an overstock return. And this is usually a backdoor program, but we could put it on a menu for you. So if you don't have this, get with us or customer service and we can make this happen. And let me just find, I don't know all of his vendors, so I'm going to just create one here. All right, star returns, 58. So when I go into his purchasing menu and I put that on his menu to create an overstock return, okay, I'm going to tell it the product line that I'm working with. I'm going to starting product line, ending product line. I'll use my vendor number, okay, and we ask whether you want to use min-max 1 or min-max 2. Obviously, we're using min-max 1, and I just hit the F10 button, and it will create a return PO, 6468. There's 240 numbers that he's overstocked on right now. Okay, so it automatically created that purchase order. If we go back into purchasing, 6468, there's my vendor return. Okay, now you'll see that obviously in this particular case, as min and max are zeros, these are all overstocks, it's saying he's had no sales on this, okay? So basically, do we want to send this one back? Here I'm looking at it and it says, well, it's kind of a new number, okay? And he might have put this, remember I did not change, I didn't re-rank everything. It's supposed to ignore the new numbers and not touch those, but let's go to another number here. Yeah, okay, so here's the same thing here. This particular part number has been on the shelf. There's no sales whatsoever. This is one we might want to get rid of. If I look at what this purchase order is worth and hit the F7 key while I'm in this purchase order, you can see that it's $5,600 right here. So we didn't, since I didn't change all the R's that were in there, okay, obviously it would have been the $6,600 or even more. One of the other things that I do when I'm doing that inventory duplicate, okay, when I say stock parts only and I want to change my order points, you know, to 0, I'll also change the description to read return to vendor, return to vendor and a date, okay, so that if this stuff sits in there, I know that I've had it on my shelf for a period of time and I want to return it, okay. So when I was doing that inventory duplicate field, what all I'm going to do is change the part numbers that I have a positive quantity on hand with and that have an order point. And so you would see in there that I'm going to send them back. I would rather have my counter people, my sales people tell me that, you know, when a customer calls them for a part number, I'd rather have them say, look, I had this on the shelf for 2 years and we just sent it back. Because usually it always happens when you do send something back, that's when you get a call for it. But I'll take that chance when you got $6,000 worth of inventory here that needs to be cleaned up. If I lose and I want to put new numbers in, I'll take that chance. Okay.
Bob, just real quickly, I know you've covered 3 or 4 heavy-duty things. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Please ask questions because some of this stuff can get a little complicated, and if there's anything that you don't understand, or even if there's not very many of you, so if you have a question about your specific case, please ask. We've got time to cover that sort of thing, so I'll keep an eye up for people that raise their hand, but please feel free to ask questions because this can be a little bit confusing and it's very detailed and very involved, and we really want everybody to understand this stuff. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
So if we go through the steps that we just did, step 1 is basically run the bestseller report, identify your 0 sales, and once you've identified them, you're going to change the popularity code to an R, okay?
Bob, one more thing real quickly. Does everybody, I hope everybody that's on this has the documents that I emailed. The outline is one thing, but the Z-Factor document details this step by step, and as Bob goes through it, you might want to just make sure that you understand each step. And he's referring to it without actually referring to it, but he's following along. So everybody please try and follow along on that Z-Factor document. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
Okay. In either case, first step, identify your 0 sales, change your pop code to an R so that you can manage them. Now you could do things within programs that, you know, you could duplicate inventory fields by pop code. You could do it by stocking versus non-stocking parts. For the most part, you want to be able to either zero out all your order points, maybe change your description so that it reads that you returned it and the date you returned it, so it gives you some information in there at a later date. And once that's done, now you can create your vendor return. And if it's not on your menu, that's a shell-out program. It's called ostock.sh, okay? Ask you for very minimal information, what product line, what vendor, and what order, you know, what min-max you want to use, okay? If and why I like doing it like this is because it puts it in inventory order. If you do have the okay to send this stuff back to your vendor, very easy, you know, to print this out, pull it, make sure that this stuff is there, edit it, you know, if there's any mistakes or you don't have stuff or you have more than what you thought, okay? And basically, you've just cleared out that line, okay? If nothing else, if you don't have the ability, as I mentioned before, to be able to send this stuff back, at least you want to eliminate the order points so that you're not reordering dead merchandise. Okay. Again, and I agree with Steve, is there any questions so far? Okay. Once I've done this, okay, and I'm going to delete this PO. The next thing that I want to do is I want to kind of, you know, find out. I've identified what I'm stocking and not selling. Now I'd like to identify what I'm selling but not stocking. Okay, and at that particular point, I'm going to go back into my IU dupe one more time. I'm going to go in for that particular product line. Stock parts only, no. All part numbers in this line, yes. All pop codes, yes. And all I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to zero out my min-max 2 because I'm going to recalculate what I think I should stock for my, you know, what I think I should have for items I've been selling and not stocking. So once I do that, okay, then I'll basically go into another program. And if you notice here, I have my printer set to printer 99 purposely because I don't want this long report to print the paper. Now I'm going to go into my report processing menu. I'm going to go into my stock status report. I'm going to pick that product line. And I'm going to include all parts. I'm going to include all pop codes. Okay, the zero sales are going to, it doesn't matter. I don't have to go through and ask, you know, different report codes or pop codes because it's going to ignore those report code errors anyway because they're all zero sales. There's no report code I'm going to use, so you don't want to put anything in that field. I want to show min-max 1, and I want to calculate min-max 2. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say weeks into this current quarter. Currently now, I think there's 12 weeks into this quarter. We're almost at the end of it. We're open 6 days a week. I want to look at maybe all my quarters but the last quarter because that's going to be falling off here in about another week or so. Okay, so depending on the time when you're doing this, you want to kind of look at, okay, my last quarter is going to be falling off in just a week or two, so I don't even want to consider that. Okay, then the minimum days to reorder. Okay, this you got to look at this as a factor. Okay, I sometimes, depending on the line, I look at it just basically does a math program. If I put a 30 and a 60 day minimum and maximum days to reorder, okay, and you sell one a month, it's going to give you a min-max on that part number of 1 and 2. Okay, if you sell 2 a month, it's going to give you 2 and 4. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to identify everything that I've sold at least 1 or 2 times in the course of those 4 or 5 quarters. So I might do a 180, okay, and a 360 because I want to pick up everything, okay, and I'll say yes to maximum levels, you know, being at least 100% of unit pack. And in this particular case, right now, I just want to look at my non-stocked items. I don't care about anything else right now because I wouldn't put 180, 360 days for minimum and maximum days to reorder. I just want to make sure I pick up any sales that I might have done in the last year on even the onesies and twosies. When I'm looking to do a reclassification and I need an offsetting order, so to speak, I want to see all my sales. In some cases, if I sold 2 of a filter, I want it in stock. I'd rather put something in stock that I've gotten a couple of hits on rather than not have it at all and maybe dump a whole bunch of money in just the popular stuff. I still want to spread it out a little bit. okay? Then I'll just say yes, begin printing, okay? And once that's done, I'll say update min-max2 in the inventory file. I'll say yes. Am I sure? Yes. So now, based upon what I've just done, I've just updated my order points for min-max2 for a pretty wide range of time because I want to pick up everything that I've sold. I don't want to have to scroll through part number after part number to identify items that I'm, selling but not stocking. Now I'll go back into purchasing, and I will create a purchase order.
Why don't you view that report before you do this, Bob? Because you printed it to the screen.
Pardon me?
Why don't you view that report before you do this to show the calculation?
I don't even look at that really because all this is doing is giving you all your sales history by part number. But
it's showing you the difference between what it had in min-max versus what it's creating now. Like
right, it gives you a present and a suggested.
First number was something that never sold.
My point on this is that I don't want to peer through. I don't want to have to go looking at part number to part number to part number. I just see here in this particular number I've sold 3. But what will happen here is when I get to the PO, when I go to create a PO,
put them all on one
page. That's going to be all in a purchase order that I can very easily see that without looking at all that stuff that I didn't want to.
Right.
Okay. So what I'll do here is I'll go into purchasing. I'll go to my vendor. If I could type it right. And let's just do a stock order here. Okay. I'm just going to do 163 to 163. Whoops. Okay. I don't need to do report codes or pop codes. And by the way, if you rank your inventory correctly, this is where pop codes can come in very handily. If you've got your stuff ranked properly, you could do your A's and B's only during, 4 days a week or 3 days a week. Towards the end of the month, if you're looking, I need to get my popular stuff in, but I don't need some of those slower mover stuff in, and kind of reduce some of your purchase orders and free up a little cash, okay? So when I do this purchase order, I'm going to use this time min-max2. And it created another PO, 6469. Like I said, I have no idea what we're going to see here, okay? It gave me an order of 250 items, okay? And it's basically, if I start looking at this, now I'm just looking at 250 items that do have some proven sales, okay? That's a fuel filter that basically it's an import car. Maybe I want to get that in. The bottom line is that I've been able to take all these part numbers that I've sold in the course of a 6 or 8 month or year period, whether I sold 1, 2, 4, whatever, by having that wide range of minimum days and maximum days to reorder, I've really put them in one place that's very easily to go through. So now I got just 240 numbers that are proven sellers, maybe not what you really want to stock yet, but I edit this purchase order, okay? I'll go through this and I'll either change quantities or I'll delete them. This one we just sold recently. This one we sold 2 of, and it was in the second quarter of 12. It's just a gasket. It's not a lot of money. I may put it in, I may not. The point is that I'm not peering over a long report, and I'm looking at items that have proven sales. This one I would delete. Sold 1 in the fourth quarter, 11, and nothing since. Not good enough. Okay. This one just sold 1 currently. So I might bring in these current numbers, but the bottom line is that without scrolling, without peering over reports, I've identified what I'm selling but not stocking, whether it's 1s, 2s, whatever the case is, and I'll go through this and do it. But I can very easily create an offsetting order. If I price this thing out, it's a little bit more than what he's sending back, but I've probably got some numbers in here with some big, it's got 13 grand here. So this would definitely be edited. There's 250 numbers in here, and it's mostly 1 and 2s. There's some with 4s. Sometimes I'll do this with somebody, and I'll find a part number that they've been running to their warehouse or buying locally, and they'll have done this 6 and 7 times, and they still don't put it on the shelf. Okay? This is a good way to identify that. I'm going to stop again and ask if there's any questions.
Bob, you might want to just touch on adding min-max 1 to these items after you get this PO edited down.
I'm going to get there.
You're headed there. Okay, good.
Next on my list.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, if you receive the document, okay, and this is kind of an advanced setting, so you got to be careful that you do this properly, okay. Once you've edited this purchase order and you've sent it in, you received the product, okay, then at that point you can go ahead and receive it into your inventory. Then you would do a shell out on that very last item on the Z-Factor document that we said, you know, if you shell out and you type in QOH, all in lowercase, the number 2, MIN, space minus P, okay, space minus O, and that's one thing that's not added here. I had that change, so we got to, that's a change that we have to make. Make sure you make a note of this. It's space minus P, space minus, one more time, QOH to min, space minus O first, then the space minus P, then space product line, space product line. So in this case, I would type in, once I've received the order into the inventory, QOH to min, space minus O, space minus P, space 163, space 163. And what that will do is it'll go through and all those numbers that have a positive quantity on hand, okay, and 00 in the min-max, it will copy that quantity on hand into the min-max. So if you ordered 1, you'll have a new min-max 1 of 1 and 1, okay? Now this is predicated on the fact that you've sent back those 0 sales items, okay? So you got to get those out of your inventory, okay, in order for that command to work. Otherwise, it's going to reintroduce an order point onto your pop code R's, but really quickly you can go back in and knock off that using IUDupe for just the pop code R's again, and you're good to go. So then those items can be reordered.
What about your regular stocking inventory? Will it change min-maxes on that?
That's what the space minus O is. It does not affect any of your other part numbers that already have order points on them and quantity on hands on them. It doesn't do anything with them. It ignores that.
So that's the minus O switch.
That's the minus O switch.
Okay.
Okay. And by the way, as long as we're talking about shelling out, okay, if you don't know how to get to the ostock.sh, and I'm going to delete this purchase order as well. Again, I don't want this 6469.
You probably don't want him to transmit that by mistake. Star would love you. Star would love you.
I think he'd be a little. They sure would. If I did a shell out, okay, and everybody has this on their system, it's ostock.sh, okay, which stands for overstock shell script that creates a vendor return. If I had a return, it brings me to that same screen that you saw that I had on the menu, asking you the starting and ending product lines, the vendor numbers, and it basically looks at quantity on hand. It looks at your order points, and it will create an overstock return, for that line. One of the things that I've always done too, by changing that description to read return to vendor, when I look at the PO, I could see what numbers are just overstocked versus what numbers are just 0 sales, and I could either delete them or massage them or edit them. There's a little bit of editing to do, but that's normal with all this stuff. I mean, everybody should always be doing, looking at their purchase orders and looking at their sales histories and doing that. So the only other thing I wanted to touch on that goes along with this program quite well is going back into 1111, into the bestseller report when we're talking about ranking our inventory. If I did that 163 to 163, And I even did this 25, 25, 25, 25, and 0. Okay, and I hit the F7, and I just I left it blank. Now it's going to bring me up all my fastest moving numbers. Okay, and I use this report quite a bit. And basically, I wanted to see how many part numbers it takes to get to a particular percentage of my sales in that line. Okay, and if I just keep scrolling down here, okay, 50% of my sales is with 46 numbers. Okay, so that's more than half of my sales with just 50 numbers. Okay, and I might say, you know what? Maybe my A's really account for, I want to see at what point with the 25% in this line, when we start getting to B's. Okay. You'll notice here that 254 part numbers, okay, is 84% of my sales. Then after that, they're gonna change to a B. Okay. Now, I may massage those percentages until maybe I only want 10% of my inventory to my top 10% movers to be A's, my next 20% to be B's, and then I'll massage the C's and D's, you know, to match 100%, and my W's are 0 sales to me. Okay, or you can use, you know, my last 5%. Everyone has a different way, and it'll vary by a line. But now you could do some pricing with this. I could put a report code in and say, you know, I could create a pricing matrix that all my W's I can maybe get a little bit more money for, or a little bit less money because I have to order them in. Everybody has their own idea on how to do this, but by really understanding the ranking and having them ranked based upon what your sales are, you could very easily do some velocity pricing. You could very easily do some purchasing with just your fast-moving numbers, save a little bit of money at the end of the month. If I just ordered A's in this store, I'm still going to hit 84% of what comes in the door. Okay? Now, maybe that's not enough. How long does it take before I'm getting to 90% of my sales? If I just did A's and B's, okay, it'll kind of do some delayed ordering. You'll be basically cover 90% of what you're selling. Any questions on this?
Obviously this is a different calculation than what you used because you didn't really change his, but this is appearing that if it had been at 25, 25, 25, the A's would have ended at 75%, correct? So he's used a different calculation than you
No,
had.
you got to remember, this is based upon, you know, that percentages is based upon 100 numbers. So if you know, it's going to change exponentially depending on how many numbers you did. But we didn't change anything. We didn't change anything. So let's do this, okay? Just to give you an idea, 10%, 10%, okay, 30. Let me do here. Wait a minute. Let's do 40. Let's do 40. And 0. Okay. So now when I'm here, let's do that F7 again. All right. Now this should change quite a bit. See before I get. Okay. So now, if you'll notice here, we're getting our B's now. Now our A's is 66% of our inventory. Okay?
Now how does that relate to 20% that you put?
Pardon me?
Does that relate to the 20% based on the...
Well, what I did is I said I want the top 10% of my numbers. Okay, so I got 102 numbers here that represents the 10% fastest movers in that particular product line, and I want my top 10% to be A's. I want my next 10% to be B's. And you can massage this to where I might do 11%. Maybe I want my A's to be 75% of my volume, okay? You can massage those numbers until you get it where you want and then set it. But the point is that, you can maybe do a little velocity pricing on those A's. You're in charge of how you want to do this. Every line is different, okay? You might have some lines that they're all pretty slow movers, but it'll still rank them based upon your sales. So you get a pretty good idea of like I say, you can make. I was able to do some stuff with with pricing by ranking my inventory quite a bit. So I use this quite a bit. Questions, anyone? I heard something.
No. You heard a pin drop.
Okay. Maybe you can ask this question. Is anyone seeing some value here of what we've discussing?
What I can do is I can open up. Emily's mic was awfully loud. Mark and Lewis, your mics are open. Does this apply to what you guys do?
Yes.
Is it something that you've been doing in a different way, or will this give you kind of an enlightenment on possibly a different way to do it? Something that you think you can handle?
Yes, mine. I've been doing mine basically like this, but whenever I put a new number in, it defaults with an A pop code, and I start off with A at 0, and B is like 10%, and that pushes all the A's out of the way.
So your new numbers are all A's.
Yeah. Can that be changed whenever you put a new number in to default? Say like a
yes.
W?
There is a user var option for that, I believe, Steve.
Yeah, I thought I read that. I need to do that on mine.
There's
a couple user var options that kind of apply. One of them applies to the bestseller report. Currently now, if I went into that line and just did that and did it to a printer.
Yeah, the only option for that is use top only, which just eliminates all the new parts section. That's a user var option. But the part that applies to setting the pop codes on new items, I'll look for that, Lewis, and get back with you on that one.
Okay.
I'm not right off the top of my head. I don't know what it is. I'm looking through that document like crazy.
I think I know where it's at.
It was on last week's documentation.
It was, and I just and that thing is 28 pages long, so I'm going to have to look through it just a little bit, but we'll find it. If you find it before I do,
I'll go back and look at it.
That's fine. I'll look too.
Default quantity on hand. Okay.
That's just
creating a new part sets the default field values for quantity and min-max. Okay, then there's something in data pack too.
While you're doing that, I'll find it. I don't know if it's in data pack. I believe it's in
data IU.
No.
That's your default quantity on hand. Disallow the addition of new parts.
DEF POP2S. It's in load pack. It says defaults the pop code field to S when adding a part. Applies to all parts in the load pack that don't have a pop code. If you set it to 2, it sets the pop code of the part to S only if the pop code in the load pack. Now I think this is unique to load pack, so that's probably not the right one. Are you loading via load pack, Lewis, or are you adding?
I don't use load packs.
Okay,
yeah,
so
you want to basically it works the same way though. If you set this to default pop code to S, everything will go in as an S instead of an A,
regardless of how you load it.
Right.
Okay. You can play with that one, Lewis.
Okay.
Okay. Lewis, did you know about the ostock.sh creating an overstock return?
No.
Okay.
That's a new one on me.
Right, and a lot of times what I'll do is it'll create a purchase order very, very quickly for almost any vendor. Sometimes I just want to see what I've got overstocked with, okay? And really quickly you can run a PO for a product line that in my system I always set up a generic vendor that was tied to every product line so that I always made sure I didn't miss anything, okay? So when I was done with my purchasing, I might use that generic vendor to see if there's anything anywhere in the system that I might have missed. So it kind of looks at it. So I'd use that generic vendor for my returns just to see if I had a ton of overstocks on a particular line. And I wanted to see what was coming back. And, you know, it was just another way to manage inventory without having to, you know, run reports and just peer over them. Okay?
Okay.
So basically, you know, what you can accomplish with this is, you know, a lot of people, when they would have a reconciliation plan to clean up a product line, you know, they're peering over reports, they're looking at dust on the parts on the shelf. Everybody has a different way to look at it, okay? Again, when I first started doing this, I was having, you know, I'd look at my my brake line, and I'd have 35% of zero sales. So I started cleaning it up, and I maintained a 16% on brake parts, okay? I maintained about a 13% on filters. The national average is at least 30%. I've gone into stores that were 50% with zero sales. They could virtually open up a second store. You know, you got $600,000-$700,000 worth of inventory, and half of it is zero sales. If you could turn that into, you know, to the same part numbers that you had on the other $300,000 or $400,000, you can open up a second store and put in your own inventory and still do as well. So maintaining that stuff is important. I routinely would go into lines, I'd go into the product line file, and I would look at what my dollar amount is in my beginning of the month inventory, what I have, what my zero sales are, okay? I'm looking at my analysis section, and I'm looking at sales history, okay? I want to see what my sales history is. I want to see what my gross profit is. I mean, to me, that's important. If I'm going to do any kind of velocity pricing, okay, I mean, by the way, this looks so bad because he does everything on rebate, and he's got jobber costs in here, and this doesn't look at vendor discount the way it should.
I'm sure when that screen came up, everybody on the webinar said, why is this guy still in business?
Right. And I looked at it too, okay? But I also want to look at my turns, okay? For years, everybody wanted to get at least 4 turns on their inventory. It's almost impossible today with the explosion that we've had in parts. So managing this stuff and being successful with keeping that Z factor, that zero sales factor, to a minimum is key. It's absolutely key. So I hope this has helped. Unless you guys got any questions, I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm glad to see that those of you that stayed. This is very important information, and we appreciate your time. I know this takes a chunk out of your day, but we hope it's something that's worthwhile to you. And as usual, the recorded webinar will be on the website probably later this afternoon or tomorrow. And if you have any questions, you can get a hold of Bob or myself. We'll be glad to help you out personally on your system. With nothing else, thank you very much, and everyone.